Greetings, Tim Pool and Luke Radowski. I got the answer to all the problems y'all talk about. Stick around, I'll give them to you. Awesome. Nobody has to wait for the climax because I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer. The answer to how you fix all of these problems that y'all talk about is in the courts. It's through the courts. It's with law. The only problem with that is that courts aren't acting right, if nobody's noticed. And to get them to kind of act right, the public kind of has to force their hand. I'll give you a couple of examples. Nobody was going to arrest Derek Chauvin until the public got really upset. Ahmaud Arbery. His killers weren't going to get arrested until everybody got upset. Jeff Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They weren't going to get arrested until everybody threw a really big fuss. So, hopefully, that kind of evidences why people have to get together and start watching the courts. Now, the courts used to follow the law, and the only thing that really makes them follow the law today is their own conscience, which is kind of a scary place to be. You see, I've been helping people in and out of court since before I started this YouTube channel, which was back in 2015. And just like Luke talks about the algorithms.
I also believe there's an element of it that is something that is snobby elites thinking that they could control what you could listen to. And I think that's one of the most patronizing, that's one of the lowest level kind of thinking individuals that you could have with this larger idea that you yourself don't have any discernment. You don't have any personal responsibility. You need to be told what you can and cannot listen to. That idea is absolutely absurd. It's criminal. And the fact that individuals control what you could see, when they control the algorithms, they control people's perceptions. They control our views of the world. And when you control that, you could control almost everything. And that's why and the intelligence agencies have been so involved with big tech, and that's why I think there's even a bigger play here that, of course, is snobby, is very elitist, but it's essentially leading to the divide and conquer agenda and trying to control individuals by controlling thoughts, and that's crazy.
I do too. I really agree with you. That's why the World Economic Forum is something that I'm concerned about. That's another reason why it bothered me that Dan Crenshaw, who's supposed to be a Republican, was, I think he was involved in it in 2019. So these are the things that concern me, and I'm not into globalism. I honestly, I love America as our own country and our own identity. Not that it has anything to do with race or religion or any of that stuff. I care about us as Americans. But when you have those ideas, like these globalist ideas that are preached and taught on the World Economic Forum, that really concerns me because they're very integrated in the people that run Twitter.
Let me pull this up real quick. We have this from CNBC Africa. Daniel Crenshaw, congressman from Texas, House of Representatives, USA. They say he won a tight political race. And this is the World Economic Forum, young global leaders pushing boundaries and changing the world in 2019.
Yep.
This is interesting to me. I don't know exactly what this young global leaders thing means, but it does show that Daniel Crenshaw was named as, in some way, associated with the World Economic Forum, which, as most people are familiar with, has been a proponent of the Great Reset, a restructuring of global capitalism. And they're the ones who put out the video that said, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." So I'd be curious to know what this means, about what...
I find it very concerning.
Yeah.
It's my personal belief that I came to the game way too late on the internet, and that they bury me and they censor me, and I don't even believe that the numbers of views are actually legit on my channel. And it's not monetized, and the main reason it's not monetized is because I'm pretty sure they'd take it down if they knew I was making money off of it. See, a lot of people sit there and they vote on the president, and they vote for legislatures thinking that this is going to make a difference. And really, the only thing that happens is it changes the policies that the government implements. Let me give you an example. You see, when Biden got into office, it was big news. He wrote the most executive orders that any president's ever written. And the same thing happened when Trump got into office. Big news. He wrote the most executive orders that any president's ever written. Same with Obama and Bush and Clinton. And you want to know why this is? Because whenever a different party gets into office, they write executive orders to get rid of all the other parties' executive orders, and then they write executive orders to implement their own policies back into play. Now, that's all good, fine, and dandy. But here's the thing, is that the legislature is supposed to create legislation for the government to govern itself with. The executive branch is supposed to execute that legislation, but it's up to the judicial branch to decide whether a law is applied to it or not when me and you go in there. Because if you go back and watch the video I made about reading the Constitution, Section 8, I told you in the last video we were going to go over this. The Congress shall have power to lay taxes and collect taxes, duties, impost, and excise, to pay the debts, to borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes, to establish uniform rules of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States, to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures, to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the security and current coin of the United States, to establish post office and post roads, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas, to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. I don't think they follow that one. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulations of the land and naval forces. To make rules for the government. That's interesting. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. This is what Congress has the authority to do. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. Not exceeding 10 miles square. And for those of y'all who don't know, that is Washington, D.C. So Congress has the right to legislate Washington, D.C. because that is the United States of America. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department thereof. See, the interesting thing I find about Section 8 is not what's in it, it's actually what's left out. Because here's what's left out. They don't have the right to legislate laws over you. They don't have the right to legislate laws over man and woman. They only have the right to legislate laws over the government, over governmental entities, and over governmental departments. Okay? Now, if you wish to contract with one of those entities, with one of those departments, with one of those government agencies, if you wish to act as a civil officer, they're not going to stop you. They're not going to stop you because that's exactly what gives them power, authority, and control. And that's exactly how a communistic state works, is everybody's a part of it. Everybody's a part of it. Nobody can escape it. Think about it. Think about it. Again, the states can't pass any bill of attainders, ex post facto laws, or laws impairing the obligations of contracts. And that is probably one of the most important rights that you can have right there. There's no law impairing the obligation of contracts. When you're charging somebody with, I don't know, intent to distribute, that's a pre-crime. How do you know what somebody intends to do or not? You could be Snoop Dogg and just have 8 pounds of weed for yourself. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Snoop Dogg got charged with I think it was 4 pounds of weed, and they knocked it down to simple possession because he was saying, hey, for real, I'm a rapper. Why do I need to sell weed? You don't make any money off of selling weed. You make money off of selling coke. Why do I need to sell 4 pounds of weed? I just bought this for me and all my peoples to smoke. I don't know. That's just how it worked out. Let's keep going on with the rights. It clearly talks about how there's nothing in the Constitution that says they have the right to govern you and I. Everything that they talk about governing has to do with themselves. Because the United States of America, was an experiment in self-government. Now, what makes me qualified to talk about these things? I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who would say that I'm not. And it's true, I have no formal education. I dropped out of high school, kind of like you, Tim. And what gives me any type of credentials? I don't know. You know, I have helped numerous people get out of hundreds of thousands of dollars with the IRS. I helped a gentleman walk away from conspiracy to traffic marijuana charges. I've helped people get away with intent to distribute marijuana charges. I have helped get people's children back from the state and from other actors. And the reason I have been able to do this is because I studied law. I studied law, and I've been helping people in and out of court since before I made this YouTube channel. And now it's getting really, really scary because back in 2020, I saw a man get arrested for asking if he was a slave. I actually made a video about it pretty recently. It's called Save the Slave. Save yourself from enslavement. And this is what I'd like to talk about, because Tim, I heard you talk about with the problems, like if people don't do anything about these problems, if they just sit around, then it leads to hyper individualism. And I thought that was a pretty good way to describe it. I really like Adam's documentary about hyper normalization and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the USSR. And that's basically where I think we're at. And ever since I started this YouTube channel, see, I've known how to exercise a Republican form of government. And only in a Republican form of government can you have a court of law. And that's another video for another day. But when you exercise a Republican form of government, you're basically saying that the government cannot govern you unless you cause some type of harm, injury, and or loss to somebody else. So, to exercise a Republican form of government, one of the things you gotta do is you gotta fire all of your elected representatives. And you gotta quit voting. Because if you are voting on the government, then you are participating in it, and that means that you wish for the government to govern you. It's kind of implied. So, I haven't voted in a really long time. And Luke, I would like to say to you, I really appreciate your work, because when people kind of gave me crap for not voting for Obama in 2012, and they were asking me why, I'd always pull up your video where you were going around to Obama supporters and you were telling them about how many more wars, how many more countries Obama was in rather than Bush, and the fact that Obama pretty much didn't carry out anything he said he would do as president. But I also made a video talking about vote Kool-Aid Man for president. You should go check it out. It's really, really interesting, and it tells you why the presidents can't really change anything. But I was watching y'all interview Marjorie Taylor Greene the other day, and I just absolutely loved what she did with Record the Vote. That was awesome. And she got heat from her own party and the Democrat Party for that one. Surprise, surprise. Because that's how the system's rigged. That's how the system's set up.
When I found out that they could pass bills by voice, I also learned floor procedure. So it's like games, right? There's rules on each of us, what we can do. So the next time the bill came up and they were debating the bill back and forth, and I was really paying attention this time, and I had my lovely little book in my lap that I had the rules. The speaker up there, Speaker Maskface is what I call him because I didn't know who it was. He asked for the vote, the voice vote. And this time, so the Democrats are like, yay. And the Republicans over here, nay, because they're used to losing. And right as Speaker Maskface is about to gavel it in, announce the bill has passed, the rule is, as a member of Congress, and any of us can do it, you have to get to the microphone right then, and you have to say, Madam Speaker, I ask for the recorded vote. And I did call him Madam Speaker because gender doesn't count according to our rules. Sorry, anyone. But I did say that. I said, Madam Speaker, I asked for the recorded vote. So here's what happened. It was like just a complete change. When I asked for that, that means at that moment, they have to call all 435 members of Congress, no matter where they are, to come down and vote on that bill. And everyone is on record. That means you can look up how your representative voted. You can look up your member, your representative. You can look up your member. People can look me up and go, did she vote for that or did she vote no for that? What did they do? What did AOC vote? What did Dan Crenshaw vote? What did Eric Swalwell? What did Fang Fang tell Eric Swalwell to vote? You know, they can do all this stuff. So here's the deal. Recorded votes are so important. So I committed myself to that. And I kept on asking for recorded votes. And I kept on asking for recorded votes. And I pissed everybody off. I'm talking about royally.
Good.
Here's what happened. So every time they got called out of their committee meeting. They got called out of their lunch with lobbyists. They got called out of their fundraising calls that they were sitting there begging for money. They had to wake Jerry Nadler up from his nap. I mean, it was unbelievable. Everybody had to come in and vote. What else did it do? It messed up the schedule. Nancy was very upset because they had a whole schedule. Bills were flying through. And all of a sudden, they weren't flying through anymore. Cori Bush's bill, I defeated her bill. It was really important. Her bill actually passed by voice until I asked for the recorded votes.
Whoa.
Which bill was it?
It would have allowed felons in prison to vote.
Oh, wow.
That's what her bill did.
Yeah.
So it won by the voice, but then when you double checked it, they were like, oh, we made a mistake. She didn't.
When I asked for the recorded votes, even Democrats voted against her. Wow. We had 318, I believe it was 318 no votes on Cori Bush's bill to allow felons in prison to vote.
Wow.
So when people say Marjorie Taylor Greene has not been effective in Congress, I'm going to tell you something right now. I've got stories for days. I will argue I've been one of the most effective members of Congress because I have put and led the effort to put the entire United States Congress on record so that Democrats can look up their representative and say, how did my Democrat that I voted for vote? Republicans, how did my Republican representative vote? I think this is extremely important for everyone across the country to know the job performance of their representative.
The establishment can't be happy with you.
Oh, no. I got in trouble with Republicans, too. As a matter of fact, I got chewed out. I mean, chewed out. You want to know why? Marjorie, people don't want to be on record.
Oh, no.
Meaning they don't want their constituents to know how they voted.
But that's a really simple rule that somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, being first year in Congress, could go and execute. And this is how I get a lot of people out of the court stuff that they're into, is because of just using very simple rules like first-hand knowledge and testimony, proof jurisdiction, things that people would understand if they just thought about them. And it got me to thinking, it might not be such a bad idea to try and take over the court of the legislature while trying to get courts of law back. Because the legislature and the executive branch are just different types of courts. They're not courts of justice. They're not courts of law. They're a different type of court. So, with that in mind, I would like to nominate somebody for Congress because I think we should start getting in to these politics of new people, of new politicians. And there's this man, his name is Jeff Gregory. I will put a link to his website in the description below. I had a 20-minute conversation with him after watching him speak at a GOP meeting for about 20 minutes. He seems like a good enough man to me. And he seems like he has a pretty good understanding of how our government is supposed to work and what legislatures' jobs actually are. In almost every single state, after it was a colony, when it became a state, and their constitution said you have to change your legislatures often. Because that's really good advice. It's very, very smart and intelligent. And they got this idea from Athens, the first republic that we know of in history. In Athens, they actually had a system of a lottery. And you can go check out where I talk about that and make Athens great again. So, let's take a look at some of the things that have kind of happened over the years. Because I've told you the answer's with the courts. And it's this easy to prove to you that it actually is with the courts and the courts of law. And that is, you look at the states that still have the COVID mask and the mandates for masks and vaccines. It's the states where the judiciary will uphold it. In states like the state I'm in, South Carolina, we are way too much of a Republican form of government for that. Even though the last time I was in court, they wouldn't allow me to exercise my Republican form of government. I went to court 3 times. 3. You can go check out the first 2. It's on Bad Hair Traffic Court Day. And required a court of law. They couldn't produce anyone, so they moved against me when I wasn't there. And now they're charging me again. And that's how I know that they're not respecting a Republican form of government. So stay tuned. We're going to keep this show rolling.
Everybody in the system appears to be in on it. When 31 judges recuse themselves from a case, you have a serious, serious problem.
And other than that, we're going to, the meeting is this afternoon that Judge Burton is calling. And I think now that more judges are being called out and named, I'm sure it has gotten their attention. But this threatens to take down the entire system. The judges are in on it.
They were caught on video after this lawsuit was filed. So there was a lawsuit filed alleging that this cabal of guardians was colluding with judges and with therapists, psychologists to diagnose one parent with false psychological disorders, charge them huge amounts of money, and take their children from them, hide child abuse allegations, and give the child to the wealthier parent, who is also happens to be the parent that the child is accusing of molestation. In the cases I've revealed, Nick, these same guardians, Elaine Pudlowski, with her psychotherapist friend James Reed, who is also married to a former judge, they are working together. And every one of these parents I've spoken to who have had experience with these two and others in the system are reporting that they did the same thing, worked with a doctor to have one parent declared unfit and hid child abuse allegations in order to give the child back to the other parent.
Let me tell you the story that first got my attention, and it was a story surrounding audio that got leaked of I believe it was a 14-year-old girl. And the judge was, I wanted to say sentencing her, but telling her, no, you have to go live with your father. And she's pleading. Somebody leaked audio of this, pleading with the judge, saying, he molests me. He is my molester. Do not do this. And the judge threatened to send her mom to jail if she did not.
She didn't just threaten.
She did.
She didn't just threaten. She sent her mom to jail.
The entire St. Louis Judiciary Circuit Court has recused themselves from this case. The Chief Justice himself, his name is Douglas Burton, he was caught sending an email violating his judge's code of conduct by commenting on a case that was going to be in front of his court. Not just commenting, but offering to help the defendants in the case. That is obstruction of justice. He should be in handcuffs. Not only do I have him on email, but there's leaked video of 38 guardians talking about, at least two of them talking about how they spoke to Judge Burton, ex parte communication, called him up.
I think that we should, whoever's at the meeting should bring that up to the judge that, this issue is there. But I do know that he's aware of it because he's reached out to bar associations.
I will ask today, but I think that, like Bina said, he's incorporating, but that's something that they need to get a hold of.
Right. Yeah, I just don't know how much they know about it and how much it's filtered down to the other judges. And I can't be at the meeting this afternoon, so I just want to make sure that gets addressed.
Okay.
Is someone attending that meeting this afternoon?
Yeah, I am.
So let me just talk about this for a minute, because you heard the reporter say, hey, they're having ex parte communications with the judge. They're talking with the judge. Then you just heard the attorneys talking in a meeting with each other. And they're talking about having a meeting with the judge. And there's a representative from the attorneys who's going to go meet with the judge or judges. And there's another attorney who's like, well, I was invited, but I couldn't make it. I'm too busy. And they're also talking about being in touch with the Bar Association. So when things like this happen, they call their buddies down at the Bar Association, because they're going to be sitting on the disciplinary committees that are going to be hearing this. And why don't you tell me how come jury tampering is a huge crime, punishable by years in prison? But they can call the jury, they can call the judges, they can call the people in the Bar Association and say, hey, let's figure out how to handle this together. Unless there's a huge problem. And one of the big problems that I have is that we don't know law anymore. The public doesn't know law. Because if you did, then you would know none of those judges had to recuse themselves. And why? Why? Because judges don't have power to judge us. That's what juries are for. Judges are just there to witness the jury's judgment, to witness it on behalf of the power and authority of the state. But this has gotten turned so backwards. And it's gotten turned so backwards because too many people worship these statues the state creates, that the state calls law or statutes. That's what's really going on. And it's going to go on until you do something about it. Until you do something about it.
Is a whole lot of cash. And the idea that a woman like that, who lives such a privileged life, is driving a Lexus, according to public records, can say that she has not made money off of this scheme is an absolute absurd lie. James Reed, with his ex-judge husband, is living in a $900,000 house in St. Louis. So these people truly believe that they are not making a lot of money. Do they know what their average client is making? The money they took from the clients, by the way, was their college savings for their children, was all they had. So many of these clients contacted me and said, I am now out of a job, I lost my car, I lost my house. I had to sell everything to pay Elaine Kulowski her $30,000 fee. And she has the nerve to say she's not making money. These people are out of touch, they are elite, they are privileged economically and in every other way. And it makes me angry to hear them say that they don't make any money off of this scheme.
Taken Elaine to task, though, in this Cash for Kids scheme that I was originally named in, I haven't received a penny. I don't know where that money is. It's COVID.
On top of that, you're running a Ponzi scheme, Elaine? How dare you?
Right. We should all be really wealthy by now.
Yeah. I mean, when you're selling kids,
Right.
there's got to be some money attached to that.
Yep.
That's an idea. We could adopt the identity. We could call ourselves Cash for Kids.
Oh, yeah, LLC. Mile Financials. It is growing. I mean, I've got a case now with Laura where the mom's really mad at me all the time. But one of the things among the many threats that she's done is that I know 4 or 5 other families, and we're getting together and we're hiring a lawyer. I don't know that she is. A lot of what she says isn't the truth, but there's a part that she certainly knows about this stuff.
Morning coffee. So Luke, I know you'll enjoy this. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a business practice. Now, what y'all just saw was video from St. Louis, Missouri. You see, because even though I'm really, really glad that the court is coming around to not violating the media and the press for Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, again, kind of like I said at the beginning, the media and people watching the courts is about the only thing that makes sure that they follow the law. So we're going to watch another clip from a situation up in St. Louis, Missouri, where a girl, a 14-year-old girl, is in the court talking about how her dad molests her, and the judge arrests the mom and makes her go with her dad. She actually still wouldn't go with her dad, so the judge sent her to a psych ward. Now, you might think this is incredibly sick and twisted until you actually open your eyes and realize that concerned parents about the whole transgender in schools has created such a fuss. They are now on the domestic terrorism watch list because they don't want their daughters in the bathroom with a boy who says he's a girl, and they might molest the girls, because that's happened before.
And then they go on to ask the Biden administration to take concrete actions against these parents who, again, they say are acting as domestic terrorists. Here's what the letter states, quote, NSBA requests a joint expedited review by the U.S. Departments of Justice, Education, and Homeland Security. Additionally, NSBA requests that such review examine appropriate enforceable actions against these crimes and acts of violence under the Gun-Free School Zones Act, the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism, and any related measure. And indeed, the Biden administration responded to this letter fairly quickly. That's because just yesterday, Mr. Merrick Garland, who is the U.S. Attorney General, he released this new letter here, which announced a new concentrated effort at the federal level to target any threats of violence, intimidation, and harassment by parents towards school personnel. Specifically, according to this letter, he is directing the FBI, as well as U.S. attorneys, to convene meetings with the federal, state, and local leaders within the next 30 days to, quote, facilitate the discussion of strategies for addressing threats against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff. Furthermore, according to the Department of Justice, more efforts will be rolled out in the next few days, including the formation of a new task force that will determine how to use federal resources in order to prosecute parents, as well as to how to advise state entities on how to prosecute parents in cases where the parents did not break any federal law.
The school board has passed the transgender policy, which allows the opposite sex to use the bathroom not of their birth. Did you know we can no longer have homecoming king and queen? We can no longer have father-daughter dances because of these policies. There was a horrible sexual assault that happened in May, and this school board and superintendent covered it up. They placed the predator back into another school to sexually assault another girl.
But as we'll see in this video, when girls get raped, society and our Christian nation just doesn't really seem to mind that much. Stay tuned.
So we can make this easy, and do this easy, so we can do the hard way. That's why it's in part of life. Easy way, so we can do the hard way. There's no evidence.
This is what I'm telling you. Nobody knows my emotions more than I do. And nobody can say my experiences about Melly because I was the person that experienced it.
Understand.
So I don't understand. No, you don't understand. If you understood, you would have learned to go to the child molester.
No, Delilah. I'm going to stop you right there.
Hold on.
Get her goddamn name right or I ain't going to fucking let you say it again.
Dad. Dad.
What? What do you have to say to me, Delilah?
Can you please just
I
back
moved
the
away.
freaking papers?
I moved away, Delilah. I moved away. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't sign these papers. Maybe I should just let you grow up to be a fucked up little kid like your mom is.
Before we go on the record, is there any change in momentum? Are you going with that voluntarily?
I don't want to go with them.
I didn't ask if you want to. I understand you don't want to. I asked if you are going to go with them.
No.
Sir, I need you sitting up here, and I need you back in the
You want me in this chair?
I know you were absent, wait before you go on. I know you were absent for some of what happened. I came out and addressed the parties in an effort to have a peaceful transition. Since there's no peaceful transition, the court has determined it's going to proceed on its own motion for criminal contempt that we were here on initially, that the court was willing to forego if the child went peaceably. So just so you understand, we're going to catch you back up. The child has indicated to the court that the child would rather go into Child Protective Services than with dad. We may have to make that call after this hearing, just to keep you advised.
Okay, check this out. Come back. They give the daughter one last chance. You're gonna go? No. No. It doesn't matter. See, just kind of like you think about it and you agree with yourself. I've thought about it. He molests me. Talk about sticking things up my butt.
Fellas up your ass.
I'm not going.
Fellas up your ass.
I don't know how bad the state facility is, but I know my mama, who raised me and taught me how to act right, has a perfectly good place for me to stay. Well, we're going to take care of that real quick because we're going to throw her in jail. And she talks about, before we start this hearing, we might just have to consider after this hearing putting the daughter in a state mental facility. I mean, obviously, her and her dad do not have the best relationship. And obviously, her mom, Angela, is not a slave. So if we wish to save this little slave growing up, we got to make sure that we put her in a facility right away. Because it's in the best interest.
We are back on the record. It's a new record, though. On 14 SLDR 02617.
Did you hear that? So as soon as she gets done threatening everybody and throwing around extortion and coercion, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know. I could be retarded. But as soon as she gets done saying all of that stuff, like, hey, we could think about sending you somewhere when this thing's over. Oh, now that we're back on the record, let me get my news reporter style voice going on. And I'm going to speak real proper like this and make everything sound really good. And I'm going to say a bunch of numbers so nobody knows what I'm talking about or saying except for the other code brokers, serving citizens in the room.
0121 SLDR 00544. The 14 SL case is Freiner versus Judy, and the 21 SL case is Judy versus Freiner. In the 14 SL case, the court had called today on its own motion a hearing for criminal contempt against Ms. Freiner for having failed to appear last week for court and to produce a minor child on that day. That was February 3rd. The court thought that the motion had been at least temporarily resolved. The motion has not been temporarily resolved, and therefore the court's going to proceed on the motion for criminal contempt. In addition to that, set today was the 21 SL case. That case is a case that was filed by Mr. Judy with the writ of habeas as it relates to Ms. Freiner returning the minor child to the petitioner whose custody it has been ordered that she be in. And as a result of what has transpired today, that writ is also going to go forward, as I understand it. Is that correct? That's correct.
Are you recording?
That
That's not my phone.
consent order.
Phone.
Can you?
Are you recording? How many star chambers are they gonna have to create for Angela before you start freaking out? And Angela, you are incredibly gangster. I'll go to jail. I'm not giving up my kid. I feel you. I'm not giving up my little man in training either. That was incredibly gangster. I am honored to know you. You really can't see that they can just do this to somebody who doesn't deserve it, get it wrong every single time.
Being taken into custody right now. How does this happen before we even go to a trial? You stop just blowing me off and explaining to me?
Ma'am, nobody's blowing you off.
You're not telling me
I've explained
anything.
it to you. The judge explained it to you 4 times.
I don't understand if this is, because 1 minute I'm being told this is not a criminal case, and the next minute I'm being told I'm going to jail, and my daughter's being ripped out of me, out of my hands.
She made it clear to you. She's the judge. It's an order. It's not a suggestion. It's an order.
I'm not giving up my kid.
Well, then
you're going to be in jail.
You're going to be in jail.
That doesn't mean that I have to give up my kid.
Yes, it does. Oh, yeah, it does.
She's 13.
She's entering the order right now.
They're not taking her.
Yeah, they are. Right now. She's going to be on a plane tonight.
No, she won't.
So you're refusing to say who should go and get custody of her at the house right now?
She's not at the house.
Where is she?
I'm not giving my kid up.
So, in the first clip there, you heard guardians ad litems talking about how the whole system would come down. Judges are in on it. And we saw an email from a judge saying that he would take care of it with the Bar Association. And we know he has. You want to know why? Because the lawsuit has been dismissed. And they're going to the appellate court to try and make sure that the lawsuit is heard by the public. You know, because everybody should have the right to access a court of law and justice. But, funny thing, everybody in the appellate court seems to have a conflict of interest. Because they've all recused themselves. And then, in the next one, where you saw the little girl, well, the teenager, accuse her dad, verify in open court that her dad molested her. Yeah, she's not with the mom anymore. Not with the loving mom who will do things for her and take care of her. And this is how sick and twisted the courts are. in reality. And the reason is because nobody's watching them. And what I found in my experience of doing all this stuff is that most news agencies won't report on the courts in fear of getting sued or shut down for slander or liability or libel. Even if you're not going to report on them, you could report on the stuff I'm doing. I have absolutely no problem because I know they're never going to actually bring these cases up and sue over it. You want to know why I know that? It's because here in the United States, the truth is a defense against slander and libel. And they don't wish for any facts to be brought up in any court on any record. And you know this because anytime somebody tries to bring it into a court, they just get rid of it. They just get rid of it. And guess what? Delilah was not the only girl to accuse her dad of something like that. Elaine Pludlowski, which is the guardian ad litem at question with a lot of these cases, well, she was caught on audio recording saying this.
What happened? Yes.
Okay,
and what
about this
happened?
like 5 times.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but he's never talked to you.
Oh, Caroline, I've told you. We went over this. This will be okay. I told you when you were represented by Allison, I will never recommend unsupervised time because Mel has never talked to me about what happened. He's never spoken to me. He's never met me. He's never told me anything. This is the easiest case I have because I can easily say, because you've never talked to me, you're gonna have supervised visits.
Okay.
And that's what the whole recommendation had been. And then lo and behold, they take the depositions and he talks. And he says, nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. I didn't do anything. I don't know why she said that. I've never been alone with her. I don't bathe her. I never touched her. Next thing I know, he calls me. He comes in. I want to make an appointment. I want to talk to you about what happened. And I say, great. What happened? Nothing happened. Okay, what do you mean nothing happened? Nothing happened.
So you believe Mel Wazowski?
No, that's not what I said. You said, I said that I would
So
never
because
say
Mel
anything.
just said nothing happened.
No, listen to what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm trying to. Please don't get mad at me.
It's frustrating because I can't tell if you're not listening or you're only wanting to hear what you want to hear.
It's frustrating. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the easiest case I have ever had. Because when he wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't talk to me. So it was really easy for me to recommend that he shouldn't be allowed to see your daughter because everybody else seems really credible. But then, lo and behold, he comes in and he talks to me, and it's still the easiest case I ever had because I'm not going to tell you how much money I got paid under the table to say, oh, it's wonderful. Let the child molester molest children. And I know that this is traumatizing for you. I know it's traumatizing for you because I've done this to people a million times, okay? And I know that this is going to be a day that will haunt you in your dreams for the rest of your life. But for me, it's just Tuesday. And oh my God, I can't know or understand if you're not listening to me because you're not hearing me, or if you're just trying not to hear me because I'm so full of brown eyes. That's what I heard.
I said to you, until he tells me what happened, I can't move forward. He talked to me and told me his version.
Can't you understand?
I told you both with Trisha, with Allison. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I don't believe your daughter would just make something up. Okay? Did he stick his finger up her butt? I don't know. I do not know. I will not guess. She says he did. He says he didn't. You weren't there. She wasn't there. I wasn't there. What I have tried to do, obviously unsuccessfully, is to protect your daughter, to say, hey, if something happened.
Boom, right there. I can't believe she just said it like that. What I tried to do, obviously, unsuccessfully, I haven't protected your daughter. She just said she didn't protect the daughter. How's that for best interest of the child, huh? And you want to know what they call that? So, if I pay you to perform a job and you take my money and you are unsuccessful at performing that job and you don't give me my money back, that's called theft of services. I paid you for a service. You didn't perform that service and you took my money.
Let's figure it out. Let's try to deal with it. Let's get a safe place for her with a counselor who I trust more than my own family, which is Jean, who I think is an...
I trust this counselor more than my own family. Yeah, you want to know why? Because y'all are in a criminal enterprise together. That's why. Because you have to.
Is an awesome counselor, a loving, smart person who cares
Who
about
send
children
your
and
daughter
families.
back with a child
She
molester.
saw them together. She said, I think they could be unsupervised together. I trust what she had to say. She tried to do EMDR. It didn't work. I thought EMDR would be great. Whatever happened, she can move through whatever trauma that was. Because I know, and I knew then and I know now, this will never go to the police. It will never go to Children's Division. Those things aren't going to happen. There's not going to be that kind of resolution where you say, aha, he has been criminally prosecuted and found guilty and going to jail. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that it goes to Children's Division and they say, you will never have contact. Your parental rights are going to be terminated. Those things aren't going to happen. That's not the real world.
What she just told you is the way most people believe the system works. It doesn't actually work that way in the real world. You silly slaves, y'all just thought it worked that way. Never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. And if you think that this is just happening to people who deserve it, or poor people, or brown people, or darker colors, this woman obviously has the money to pay for the attorneys, to pay for the counseling, to pay and pay and pay and pay. And the courts are calling good evil and evil good. You're traumatizing her because you believe her. So, the next case I have to talk about, because that was happening up in St. Louis, Missouri. So, some people might be like, oh, well, St. Louis, Missouri is just really, really corrupt, it appears to be. And that is true. St. Louis, Missouri is really, really corrupt. But the thing I find really interesting is that, see, this next case I'm going to talk about is happening in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Okay? And I told you I would give you the answer to the problems. And this next case, I started bringing up the answer in the middle of talking about it because it has to do with a district attorney being an accessory to rape of a minor child after the fact. And when this came up in front of the Bar Association, that he completely dropped all of the victims' rights and moved the courts in an illegal and unlawful way, when he got brought up on charges for bar complaints, because it's an administrative court, they found that he had absolutely no remorse, but they still let him keep his job. And even after he got removed, he went right up to Buncombe County, the next county over, and they gave him another government attorney job, which just shows you how much the government actually sanctions what these people are doing. Let's watch a couple of clips. Okay. Upon information and belief. That's important because they don't know any facts. On or about June 12, 2014, VO, a minor, and her mother reported to the Henderson County Sheriff's Department that VO had been sexually assaulted by James Sapp, who Greg Newman let walk. 4 days later, on June 16th of 2014, a detective assigned to the Sapp investigation interviewed VO. VO is the 12-year-old girl that was raped. In that interview, VO described Sapp as having certain distinctive markings in the area below his belly. And from what I understand from other evidence looking at the case, is she described the freckles and a scar next to his cock. I wonder how she knew that shit. On or about August 6, 2014, the court issued a search warrant authorizing the taking of photographs of Sapp's naked body. Here's your first clue, Sherlock. They got a search warrant. And I'm going to tell you what happened. Because here's what happened. She talked to the officer. The officer got the description of the body. The officer went in front of a judge and told the judge what the girl had told her. Or the officer. I don't know if the officer was a man or a woman. But whatever the girl told the officer went in, got on the stand, and swore out a search warrant. There's only one problem with this. And this is what lets you know it's an administrative court. Is because it's very clear in law that no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. How poetic for this particular situation. Because the place to be searched was described pretty well by the 12-year-old girl. The only problem is that in law, the 12-year-old girl would have to go and swear out that warrant. She's the only one who has first-hand information of the facts. And every single one of us have seen a video where, you have attorneys in court and then somebody says, well, he said, she said, and the attorney goes, hearsay, objection. The officers don't have any first-hand knowledge of the facts. And they won't let you swear out a warrant because believe me, I've tried. That's how you know it's administrative, because they just don't care.
This plea deal came together in kind of like a bang-bang fashion. I mean, really, but for the stars aligning and happenstance that Mr. Sapp happens to be in court that day, this plea never even takes place. And I mean, is that a fair
Not that day, you're right. That's right.
And that leads me to wonder how possibly your office could possibly have gotten notice to the family when it came together like that.
Well, you're right, and I think it did happen quickly, and it was over a couple of days' time, and I believe it does. You're correct that way. Now, what I know is that, and I wasn't expecting that it would be taken care of that quickly. I didn't know Mr. Sapp was in the building, so I'm talking to Mr. Stepp, his lawyer, and I had this discussion with Mr. Stepp about how I would like to resolve the case. And it's Mr. Stepp that advised me that his client was there, and for reasons that we don't know. And I went back and asked Mr. Stepp later, I said, do you have any idea why he was there? Because he wasn't on any docket. And Mr. Stepp went back, looked at his file. He said he had no notation, nothing to show why. It was Mr. Stepp that came back to me and said, my client would like to do that. Can we do it today?
Wow. The day Greg Newman offered the plea, somehow magically, James Sapp is just down at the courthouse. He wasn't on the docket, nobody summons him there, he didn't have any business there, just somehow magically he manifests The accused rapist is there, and he's asking to go ahead and do this plea today, the plea that he didn't know was coming. That sounds really, really fishy to me. They found that 9 things he was charged with in this complaint were proven. 9 things. Surely they're going to punish him. Or at the very least, they're going to discipline him for his actions. Let's find out what happens.
This is a unanimous decision from the panel. We did not believe that this was a case of disbarment. It is our decision that Mr. Newman be suspended for a 3-year period. However, we are staying the suspension for the entire time.
All right, thank you for staying this long in the video. I can tell that you really care about our future. So let me explain what just happened. After the Bar Association, their administrative court that the legislature gave them jurisdiction of, for some reason, they just decided, we're going to suspend his license for 3 years, but we're going to stay that suspension, so he's not actually going to have any real inconveniences in his life. And we're going to put this predator back on the street so that he can let more rapists go and not prosecute more murders and not prosecute people who actually steal property and go after attorneys who are trying to help the elderly and take it to the news because it pisses them off. Because I personally know that all of those things have happened. I've talked to the accusers. And I'm personally a party of some of them. I get this out of your own code book in 1868. And this is where they abolished law. Okay? 1868. And almost every state did it right after the Civil War. And they also made slavery outlawed, right? This is why you shouldn't trust what's legal, because slavery was legal at one point in time. And slavery was made outlawed. But that's also when all these states picked up a civil procedure, a civil code, and they started prisons. Almost every single state in the Union started a prison system, a Department of Corrections, because that was the new slave field. And look at America today. The distinction between actions at law and suits in equity and the forms of all such actions and suits shall be abolished. All law, all equity, gone. Bye. Right here. And there shall be in this state but one form of action for the enforcement or protection of private rights or the redress of private wrongs, which shall be denominated a civil action. That's when they got rid of a common law action. And now all they'll let you do is have a civil action. But they won't let you know. I mean, it's pretty crazy. They didn't start this off right off the bat. And only a man can go in and perform law. But only if the Bar Association allows them.
You said there was a jury trial underway. That's not true.
No, we had so many jury trials going during that time. That's not true. I again, was relying on memory. It was Superior Court, but administrative court, not jury trials. I just finished a jury trial in Polk County. We were preparing for another term. We had a lot of jury trials in all 3 of our counties. And so I just sort of had jury trials on the mind, I guess. But it was administrative court, not a jury trial. You're right.
At any rate, there was no jury trial underway.
That's correct. It was administrative superior, not jury trial superior. That's right.
And you said our file shows that the mother never returned our call. Your file doesn't show anything with respect to that.
Well, the file does not show that. The file doesn't show that I made the call. The file doesn't show that she called back.
That's what you told the State Bar, was that the file shows that the mother never returned our call. So
right.
We were assuming there'd be some documentation in the file that the call was not returned, and there was nothing in there.
I knew.
Okay. So right here, I have the order that removed Greg Newman from office because after the Bar Association wouldn't get rid of him, obviously I made a bunch of videos and brought it back up to the public's attention on how insane letting child rapists walk, and then the people who let them walk, let those people walk too, is. So, kept on moving. We got Greg Newman removed from office. But I don't know what that really matters because they just gave him a job up in Buncombe County, the next county over. You can't get rid of these people, and that's a problem. That's why we got to have grand juries. And to exemplify that they don't move by due course of law for you, but they keep the law all for themselves so that they can use it whenever they wish to use it, here's the order to remove Greg Newman. And let me read a couple of things to you. Paragraph 6. A proceeding to remove a district attorney is neither a civil suit nor a criminal prosecution. It is an inquiry, and thus the rules of civil and criminal procedure do not apply. You see, it's not an administrative proceeding, so the administrative rules don't apply. Paragraph 11. A proceeding resulting in the removal of an individual from public office must accord the individual due process of law. So let's use some deductive logic here and some deductive reasoning. If it's not moving under civil or criminal procedure, but it has to move under due course of law, then due course of law must be something different than civil or criminal procedure. Now, let's see what this has to say about VO. Valerie Owenby, and James Sapp and Greg Newman. In connection with the Sapp case, Newman committed 3 separate acts, each of which constitutes an independent ground for removal from the office of district attorney. 3 different things he did that was so bad, the state should remove him over it. Now, I'm still kind of glad that this whole thing happened because it gave me a great opportunity to teach people about what a real grand jury is and how it's supposed to be applied. And that a real grand jury applies to government officials and not me and you. Okay? So if there's one good thing to come out of all of this, that is I got to teach people what a real grand jury is. And after that, Valerie Owenby went to go swear out a warrant against the man who raped her for 7 years and the man who was an accessory after the fact and gave him aid and comfort from state prosecution. And they wouldn't issue those warrants. You want to know why? Because a cop can have you arrested over a speeding ticket, but you can get raped and you have to go and ask the government's permission to charge somebody. This is what happens when you take away people's rights to private prosecution. You're effectively taking away their right to access a court of law. The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and this is where we get the whole idea of a grand jury from, because it talks about no person shall be held to answer for any capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. And then it goes on to talk about a bunch of military stuff. Okay, and the reason for this is that there was no federal jurisdiction like there is today. The only people who were subject to the Fifth Amendment were people who worked for the federal government. And any attorney would know this because they all know about articles of incorporations where they incorporated the Federal Bill of Rights into state law. And they did this after the Civil War. I don't remember exactly what time, but we're going to get back to the Civil War here in just a minute. Anyways, what were they talking about? Infamous crimes. Well, infamous crimes is pretty easy. So in for not or opposite of. And famous, we all know what famous means. It means like well known. So infamous means not well known. Okay, this is why what a grand jury does is they indict public officials, and they do it upon information and belief. Upon information and belief, because they have no first-hand knowledge of the facts. Because if a government's office is acting unlawfully, like Greg Newman's office, nobody's going to come from that office and say, yes, I know there's a crime going on here. I'm willing to testify in open court. Because then they're going to oust themselves if it doesn't go all the way through. If a jury does not convict, they're screwed. A felon. What's a felon? A felon is one who deceives. It's a traitor. It's a betrayer. To commit a felony. What's a felony? It's treachery, betrayal, deceit. It's treason. Treason and felony are the same thing. They're the same thing. This is why VO or her father should have been able to go into court, get on the stand, and swear out an indictment, placing the facts of the record upon the court. That's how an indictment should issue, and that's what gives them probable cause for the warrant. Then they should issue the warrant after the indictment. And we know this because if you look at crime, what is crime? It's an infraction of the laws of God. It's to charge, an indictment, an accusation, a crime, an offense. And if you don't know about this, this is why we know that all of the courts are administrative, is because they won't allow us to go in there and use the law and swear out a warrant, swear out an indictment, because they wish to administrate the law. And only use it when they want to use it. Only use it when it's convenient for them. That way they can let rapists go. They can let people lose their houses. They can let violence happen and occur and not do anything, not have any duty or obligation to you. But yet they're still keeping up the appearance because we arrest some people. And then we tell you have equal protection of the law, but it doesn't really. In Georgia, concerns that some grand juries were abusing their authority to review local government led to the legislature in 1869, right after the Civil War, to provide that the duties of a grand jury shall be confined to such matters and things as by law it is required to perform. So basically, the legislature took it over. And now they legislate it and they codify it. And the grand jury is the only thing that allows us any type of safety, any type of oversight into what the government's doing. If you don't think that a grand jury has this kind of power, because, I mean, last video I talked about how they were making it for kings. Let me just put it to you this way. Because in the first video I was talking about, you know, Republicans, Democrats, grand juries watching over them. In Watergate, a grand jury got the Nixon tapes from his office, made him hand over his own tapes because of a grand jury subpoena. Okay, Supreme Court upheld it. So there, a grand jury was going after a Republican. In Whitewater with Bill Clinton, it was because the grand jury subpoenaed Bill Clinton to come and testify before them, which is the whole reason they had the impeachment process. That's where they were saying Bill Clinton committed perjury, was in front of the grand jury. So there's an example of a Republican and a Democrat that a grand jury held liable. If you look at some other things that they talk about, like in North Carolina, grand jury serves a term of 1 year. This makes a lot of sense. 25 people serving 1 year. They can each take a day or two a month and go into government offices and look through the files, look through the records, look for discrepancies, look for things like in the file of a rape case and nobody notified the family, nobody called the victim, and they can say, hey, this doesn't look right. You might not be fulfilling your governmental duties. Mark Martin, this was 3 years ago, spent $17,000 a month. A month. And what did that money buy him? Media relations from a PR campaign. They worked on press releases, pitching stories to the media, and hiring photographers for press events. What do you think just happened with that bar association and WLOS? How much do you think they paid for that one? Because this is how the real world works, in case you didn't know. $10,000 a month to monitor Twitter and Facebook. $10,000 a month to monitor Facebook. Do you think that could have had anything to do with taking down my Facebook post? And why do it anyways? Except to rub in your face, the public's face, that they can just do whatever they want and there is no law. There is no law.
Of each criminal complaint.
Okay, close the door when you hear a click.
Here she goes into the magistrate's office.
Hi.
Okay, just one person allowed at a time. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, and that's the first thing, as I planned on going in there with her. I was walking in there with her. And when they told me only one person allowed at a time, considering the last time I was at a courthouse out of town, they tried to lock me up, I didn't feel real comfortable going in there. Now, I probably would have if we would have had more community support, because people realize that Valerie Owenby cannot save everybody from this corrupt criminal system. And if you really wish for the people in the district attorney's office to learn a lesson and to learn not to do these types of things to the general public, then it would really, really help if they saw Greg Newman get arrested and go to jail for what he did, for his criminal acts. It would really, really help. So it would really, really help us if you guys showed some support for Valerie. Because I have a tremendous amount of respect for this young woman. What she did was incredibly brave. I'm sure it was incredibly terrifying. She didn't exactly know, and she was just kind of going on faith because, well, if a cop can swear out a warrant for you for a couple of Lord tabs, then she should be able to swear out a warrant for James Sapp and Greg Newman for what they did to her. Now let's watch what happens. Because I think Valerie did an awesome stand-up job, and I'm incredibly proud of her.
So what you're telling me are felony.
So.
But the law enforcement officers, the policy of this county, this district, actually, Henderson, Pennsylvania, and Polk, has been for, like I said, at least over a decade. But having said that, it has to be investigated and then.
Alright, here's what's really interesting. She just said for this entire district, okay, Henderson, Transylvania County, and Polk. What's really interesting about this is Magistrate Jody Everett allowed me to file a criminal complaint and an affidavit attached with it about 7 months before Henry and I tried to go in and swear out a warrant against McAvoy Britton for kidnapping us in the middle of a courtroom because Henry just said, she's not my attorney and y'all are moving forward on my case. And even way back then, I made a video telling everybody, hey, come on people, we're losing our rights. We have to get law back. It's only going to get worse from here. And look at this now. She can't swear out a warrant on her behalf. She has to get the state's permission to swear out a warrant against somebody who worked for the state that everybody basically tried to cover for them until they just couldn't anymore. And this is what I'm talking about with everybody losing rights. Because when I went in to go swear out the criminal complaint, it was no problem. Linda and I just went in by ourselves. We didn't even have 15 people like we had up in Hendersonville the time we did this. And if I could have been standing next to Valerie, I'm absolutely sure I could have moved around Monica Jernigan and Logic just like I moved around Jody Everett's every single time. But I can't do this alone.
Then has to be brought to us by a law enforcement officer to charge on your behalf. It can be charged, but that's just the formal way that it has to go about.
Okay, see, that's really important because Monica just said he can be charged. Okay? So there's no double jeopardy on this. He can be charged. VO, Valerie OMB, has the complete right to charge him. She's just saying, right here, we have a policy that denies your right to due process of law. So Luke, again, hope you like the cheese shirt. Be the change and make sense. If you guys think that this craziness and this crazy stuff just happens to women, I hate to tell you. So there was a man, a war veteran named Philip Kemp, and Philip means loving and Kemp means soldier. So literally his name means loving soldier. And he got arrested for taking his children camping on Memorial Day. And then when he went into court, the judge, the judicial officer, Don Ash, brings up the fact that he should have had his kids, that the order was ambiguous, and then uses the ambiguity against him to hold him in jail for 30 days. Check this out.
What's up, man?
You Mr. Kemp?
Yeah.
Come out and talk to you for a minute.
Yeah, what's that?
What's going on tonight?
I don't know. What are y'all doing?
Huh?
What are y'all doing?
We're looking for you. So what's happening tonight? What's going on?
I don't answer questions. What do y'all need?
You don't answer questions?
No, what do you need?
Did you get in a situation with your wife or something?
I just told you. What's your badge number, Foster?
I don't have a badge number.
Okay, identify yourself, please.
I'm a deputy sheriff with the Greene County Sheriff's Department, Deputy Adam Ween, 1657.
Thank you.
Did you get in an altercation with your wife tonight?
What's your...
Ryan Shelton, 2134.
All right, thank you.
Keep your hands out of your pocket for me.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, keep your hands out
I
of your
don't
pocket.
consent to anything. I don't answer your questions. I don't know what you got going on.
What do you mean consent? We're just here to ask you a couple questions.
I just told you I don't answer questions.
You don't want to explain yourself?
I don't answer questions.
So you don't want to explain yourself?
Foster.
Yep.
I don't answer questions.
Nothing?
Do you want me to write down on a piece of paper so you understand it?
Well, we're here for a reason, Mr. Kemp.
Well, that's okay.
So I just wanted to see if you explain your side of the story.
I got nothing to say to y'all. I don't know what you want. What do you want? What do you want from me?
We're just trying to find out what's going on.
I know, but what do you want? Why are you here?
Because we got a call.
About what?
Situation.
What's the situation?
I guess it's a custodial situation.
Okay.
That's why I asked you. But you don't want to answer any questions.
No, I
That's
don't
fine.
answer questions.
That's fine.
Do y'all have a warrant?
We've got a legal reason to be here.
I didn't ask you that, bro. I know law, clearly. Do you have a warrant?
At this time, I'm not sure.
Well, if you ain't got a warrant, leave me alone. I'm trying to camp with my kids, and y'all are causing a scene. You understand?
We're not causing a scene.
You are. Look, you got, my kids are in here, man.
That's why
Young
we're trying to
kids,
be-
and you got 2-3 squad cars over here in the middle of a campground causing a scene, coming over here, making me look embarrassed. Scram. Get a warrant.
Yep. Mr. Kemp, go for change right
All right, hang on. My kids are inside, bro.
We tried doing this the decent way.
You can move that.
Mr. Kemp, you're not being detained. Do you understand what that means? Doing what, bud?
Come on, man. My kids are in there.
While we try to talk to you, you don't want to talk. So we're done asking questions now.
So if you would, tell your children just to stay in the camper for now.
They wasn't out here. We tried to talk to you, nothing here.
So we are.
I'm trying to figure out. Hello.
Hi. For Washington County. That's why I said you detained me.
Did you say this was a custodial issue?
That's all the information we got.
So if it's civil, what are y'all doing? Figuring out. Well, I mean, if it's...
Let's talk to Washington.
It says Mr. Kemp, after serving his sentence in criminal contempt charges and purging his child support arrears, is to then return to his previous parenting schedule as set out in the court's order of January 26, 2021. What do you think that means? You don't think that means he gets his summer parenting time? January 26,
All right, listen to this, because the judge just said, when we arrested him like a couple weeks ago, and we forced him to pay that extortion money, in the order it says after he did that, he gets to go back to the original parenting time where he has his children all summer, for the most part. Listen to it again. Let's hear this again. You know, you make up your own mind.
Charges and purging his child support arrears is to then return to his previous parenting schedule as set out in the court's order of January 26, 2021. What do you think that means? You don't think that means he gets his summer parenting time? I'm asking you, Ms. Cook.
Oh, you're asking me. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking my client. Your Honor, your order has made clear that when he completed certain things, that he would be eligible to have more parenting time. When he completed them.
I don't see that. Show me that order. Okay. I'm looking at the order of May 5th, and it starts out, in conclusion, is the court's goal to expand Mr. Kemp's parenting time with his children. All Mr. Kemp needs to do is pay his child support, complete his parenting and anger management course, refrain from his personal attacks on his children, or counsel this court, and promote a positive relationship between his ex-wife and their children. The court also ordered Ms. Kemp to complete certain goals if she wants to maintain her parenting schedule. Then the next sentence, last sentence in order, Mr. Kemp, after serving his sentence in the criminal contempt charges and purging his child support arrears, is then to return to his previous parenting schedule.
Your Honor, first of all, I believe it's at page 8 of your order. He has not served his criminal contempt charge. He bonded out, Your Honor. He's not filed any notice of appeal whatsoever. So he hasn't completed that first condition.
I agree with that. So let's say that you take the position, and I did not address in here that he's entitled to the appeal bond, which he is on the criminal charge. But so I didn't address that. So your position is, since he's not served those 2 weeks, whatever it is, then he's not therefore eligible to return to his parenting schedule of January 26, 2021.
Correct, Your Honor. And in other orders of this court, you have said to him plainly.
Okay, let me just explain this right here. Okay, they put him in jail for criminal contempt. He wrote a habeas corpus from jail to send to the Supreme Court. Immediately after after he does that, they give him an appeal bond. They bring an appeal bond to Kemp, and they say, here's all you gotta do to get out. You just pay this appeal bond. You heard the attorney say he didn't even file an appeal. So why does he have an appeal bond? Okay? But I don't know. You don't even get an appeal bond for criminal stuff. Okay? You can appeal it and you can stay the sentence until after the appellate court's heard. An appeal bond is a civil matter thing where somebody gets a judgment against you in civil law and you're going to appeal that judgment, but you have to put up the money for the judgment in a bond so that if you don't win the appeal, they take the money. The money's there. It's in the bank. That's what an appeal bond is. Because even the bail bondsman told Kemp he didn't know what an appeal bond was. Even the bail bondsman. So let's listen to this again so we can hear really closely, and then I'm going to show you something really cool, or maybe not so cool.
To maintain our parenting support and promote a positive relationship between his ex-wife and their children, who are also miscarried to complete certain goals, if she wants to maintain her parenting schedule. The next sentence, last sentence in order, Mr. Kemp, after serving his sentence in the criminal contempt charges and purging his child support arrearage, is then to return to his previous parenting schedule.
Your Honor, first of all, I believe it's at page 8 of your order, he has not served his criminal contempt charge. He bonded out, Your Honor. He's not filed any notice of appeal whatsoever. So he hasn't completed that first condition.
I agree with
His criminal contempt charge. He bonded out, Your Honor. He's not filed any notice of appeal whatsoever. So
how do you bond out with an appeal bond and not file any notice of appeal? What do you think's going on? I call that extortion. Mafia style. So, we're coming to the end of the video. The whole thing's kind of depressing. Never in a million years would I have thought that when I grew up, I would have to argue with adults about whether we should hold child rapists accountable or not. So, Tim, Luke, this is kind of my last plea. Almost 10 years ago, I had a son. Before I had a son, I used to make over $100,000 a month. No joke. Now I'm really thankful that my parents feed me. Because I have spent all of my time and all of my energy since my son was born to learn law and figure out how to change the world we're living in. And let me tell you how backwards that world is. That world's so backwards, you can look at the stuff that was going on in this video, and if you had somewhat of intelligence, you might think that the system was designed to do all of this on purpose. You would maybe think that the courts were made to get it wrong almost every single time when people aren't watching. It absolutely kills me to no end to know that I have the answer, but grown-ups won't act like adults. I was at a GOP meeting, not a GOP meeting, a GOP gathering at the end of October. They asked me to come and speak about common law. So I started talking about how we should arrest Greg Newman for accessory after the fact to child rape. They cut my microphone. Like I said, I never thought as an adult I would have to argue with other adults about whether we hold people accountable for child rape. And going along with the whole idea that it was planned, that it's planned to not bring anybody justice, that the courts are designed to screw everybody's life up and not produce any good at all, definitely not produce truth and justice and righteousness like it's advertised that they do. All you got to look at is the fact that the state bar knows that the plea deal is illegitimate, from Greg Newman to James Sapp. Multiple judicial officers know about it now. The district attorney's office knows about it now. And the courts still won't allow Valerie Owenby to swear out a warrant against James Sapp for child rape. But let's keep talking about mask mandates like we're actually going to be able to do anything about it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if the government can just administrate your family and administrate your children and administrate your personal life, why don't you explain to me, if they can do all of those things and everybody's cool with it, why they can't stick a needle in your arm and shoot you up with God knows what? And it's not just the GOP cutting my mic. It's the fact that over this past summer, basically everybody I ever helped and decide to dip out on me because I said we should respect people on a law show that I run on Wednesday night. This is how absurd and retarded our world is. So, you know, I see a lot of utility in the stuff that I do, but I guess other people don't really. You know, most people want to complain about society. They don't want to actually do the work to fix it. And right now, 90% of the legwork is done. We have already gotten Greg Newman out of office. If we could get enough public support to have him charged and to have James Sapp recharged, my guess is that James Sapp probably bought that plea bargain. And this just goes to show you that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the exception, he is the rule. Because James Sapp doesn't have billions of dollars. This is just how the courts are designed to work. And nobody understands it because nobody really understands law. But it's not that difficult. It's just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. She goes into Congress and with a simple rule, she makes everybody be accountable for what they vote on, for what they vote for. Law is very much the same way. There are certain fundamental rules and principles that if everybody knew, it would stop 80% of the shenanigans going on in court right now. But, oh, the law is just this big mysterious thing that the Creator never placed on our hearts, so we have to trust lawyers, scribes, and Pharisees to tell us what it is. I've sacrificed over 10 years of my life. I can't make money at this Because as soon as I start making money at this, the legal society is going to come and slap me with charges so hard it's not even funny. I got court coming up in the middle of February. I'm pretty sure they're going to throw me in jail. But let's argue about red and blue, left and right. Because if we could get Greg Newman arrested, I'd be willing to go up on my own freaking dime, even though I don't have anything, and investigate the Henderson County Courthouse. Because I'm pretty sure that if I got into those files and started seeing who got what plea bargains and which attorneys got it for them and what DAs executed it and what judicial officers accepted it, I bet I could come up with a pretty good case to present to a grand jury. And even though we have lost our right of private prosecution on the state level in every single state, you still have it on the federal level. And one of the things that you have it on, because you don't have it for everything, but one of the things that you have it on is RICO and RICO violations. But as we can tell from this video, the courts aren't going to act right unless the public is making sure they do so. Unless media's talking about it. Unless people are talking about it in their day-to-day lives. And if we don't get the court acting right, I'm going to tell you right now, go ahead, quit prepping. Quit prepping. Go ahead and turn in all of your preps and get ready. Get ready to own nothing and be happy. Because if you think anything besides happy thoughts, they know your thoughts, your dreams, everything you do when you're asleep and when you're awake. They'll punish you for it. I don't know what's so much more difficult about holding child rapists than that crap. And you want to know one of the self-evident things that lets you know what I'm talking about, holding the courts accountable and watching over the courts, is absolutely correct. Besides the fact that that's basically what happened to establish the Magna Carta and the Constitution of the United States, it would also happen to be this fact, is that liberal-leaning news is telling their patrons, the people
now
who
that
watch...
same bench in a separate 5-4 ruling said the federal government could impose the mandate for healthcare workers at facilities that receive federal money. Justices Roberts and Kavanaugh joined the liberals on this one. The ones holding the power aren't the president or the congressional Democrats, even though both were elected by the majority of Americans. Instead, the policies governing our response to the pandemic are now being decided by a conservative stacked Supreme Court bench with 3 Trump-appointed justices who were nominated by a president who didn't win the popular vote, and as others have noted, were confirmed by Republican senators who together represent less of the country's population than those who opposed the nominations. Now, as we've said on this show many times before, this appears to be an anti-democratic institution, and one that's not only aggressively blocking a democratically elected president and his efforts to legislate.
Okay. Sorry, I had to interrupt the program. I saw something in the news that I guess I didn't see. I brought it up in the talk, and then when I went to look for it, I couldn't find it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my retracting right now. Anyways, as you can see, the media is trying to make it a left versus right thing, and in some ways, ideologically, it kind of is. So, but we're just gonna check this out and watch it real quick and see what we come up with. They're about to talk about the statute and how the statute is so broad, and you can liberally interpret it to mean that, yes, OSHA has this authority. Let's check it out.
Yes, absolutely right. As Maya said, get out the statute, read the plain text of It is so blazingly clear that this mandate, this vaccinate or test mandate, is authorized by congressional action. This falls squarely within the ambit of OSHA's legitimate authority as the arbiter of workplace safety. When Congress passed this law in the 70s, it said we cannot foresee every emergency that will come down the road. So we are going to delegate very, very broad authority to this agency of experts and doctors and scientists to determine when and how to protect workers. And this is a point that the liberal justices make in dissent over and over again. And frankly, the majority doesn't really rebut the textual argument.
So the liberal justices go for this idea of just broad, limitless power. Interpret the statute in the most liberal way possible. And that's why the left is somewhat authoritarian. And what's really worrisome to me about this is that it's not really a left or right issue. It's a law issue. It's an issue about keeping your personal sovereignty and the ability to decide what happens with this. And look, they even left the door open because up in New York for the healthcare workers, they said, yeah. And that wasn't just New York, that was every federal healthcare facility. They can require the vaccines. So they're interpreting it that liberal when the government's in control of it. Now, let's see what kind of power. Let's see if the court actually has power.
COVID, and yet the Supreme Court tossed all that out the window with bizarro reasoning that does not withstand the slightest scrutiny. You know, you keep asking who has the power. I think it's clear. It's this Supreme Court.
See, the court has power, okay? The court can interpret the statute and give meaning to it so that you don't have people just running around with limitless power. This is just one more example of the legislative branch creates a statute, the executive branch executes it, and when there's some type of conflict in that execution, it goes to a court, and the court determines what they can and cannot do. This is why you should not be arguing about the policy makers and the policies that they're enacting. You should be at the court and make sure they know how to uphold law. So before I go, I'd like to say I do like the idea of trying to promote the primary elections to try and get good people in there and get rid of some of these career politicians. So again, I'm going to motion for Jeff Gregory for Congress. Let's move and try and get him through the primaries. So if you're up in North Carolina in that district and his district, please vote for him. Just a 20-minute conversation, but I honestly believe he'd do a good job. And if he doesn't, you can just get him out in a couple of years. Now, at the beginning of this little segment, I think this is hilarious because the show host does not read this particular part where it says legal principles to police the boundaries between Congress and the executive branch. Basically, the court is using legal principles to police Congress and the executive branch, and that's exactly what they're there to do. That is exactly what they're there to do. They just don't like the way that they're doing the policing. And hopefully their ideas don't win, but they're gonna win if people aren't at the courthouse watching what's going on. And if people watched a lot of what went on in family court cases, I bet they'd be appalled. Anyways, enjoy this last clip, and then we'll be back to the regularly scheduled programming. I hope everybody can understand and appreciate that sometimes when I'm before a camera, I just gotta act. I just gotta act.
You write, if Biden sat down with Roberts and Kavanaugh and asked them what pandemic policies they're comfortable with, we could skip over the performative litigation and get some real work done. Instead, we must pretend as if SCOTUS is drawing on some ancient legal principles. Nothing of the sort is actually happening. OSHA, as I was saying, has been around since 1971. This is a once-in-a-century pandemic.
Think about that for a minute. Because that could be the only voice they're hearing if nobody goes down to the court and gets involved. Alan Smith has court on February 10th. He has not been able to see both of his kids in over a month. And there's no court process. There's nothing saying that he can't, except for the fact that the courts are just that lawless. Every time he goes down there to try and move some type of process, they won't let him. But anytime his ex-wife goes down there, or soon-to-be ex-wife, to just make some stuff up, here we go. Yeah, we'll help you out. And he's going to be in the jurisdiction in Buncombe County, which is the same county that hired Greg Newman after he was removed from office by law. That just shows you how much the government really cares. And North Carolina is a pretty red and blue state. It's what I call a purple state. You see, because Republicans and Democrats are working with each other on producing this type of world. I mean, who else is working on it? There's no other parties besides the Republicans and the Democrats. But kind of like y'all have been talking about with the whole getting in to the primaries, I absolutely agree with that. We got to get people with no names. No finances. We have to get people who are just interested in trying to create a better country into the legislative and executive branches. But I'm telling you right now, the legislative and executive branches can't do anything without that courthouse. And nobody's looking at the courthouse. And look, I know all the conspiracy theories about elite pedophiles running the world, but I'm going to tell you this right now. You're not going to start off with arresting people in the royal family. You got to start off at the bottom, get the foot soldiers, get the street thugs, get the people who are actually implementing these policies and carrying them out and putting their signatures on legal documents, legal paperwork, like Greg Newman. Because you start getting those people and you can work your way up the chain. That's how a RICO investigation happens with the FBI. They start off on the street level people and work their way up. It's not that hard. It's a simple answer. I don't understand why other people don't see it. I really don't get it. And for anybody who thinks that I am arrogant, I tell you what, just come up with a better idea. Just come up with a better way to solve some of these problems. And I will admit, hands down, you are correct. Sorry if you think I'm arrogant. I have spent a lot of freaking time thinking about these problems and how to make sure my son has freedom. You want to sit here and play a blame game, or do you want to actually get things done? We don't have any time left. I'm actually really surprised that we made it this far. And I was looking up the World Economic Forum the other day, and see 2021 was going to be their meeting on the Great Reset, but they postponed it to 2022. So get ready Because my guess is whenever the World Economic Forum has that meeting on the Great Reset, it's gonna be the Great Reset. Look, there's not any other answer. There is no other way to fix the problems except getting back to a common law grand jury where the grand jury looks over government officers, getting back to a Republican form of government and not a democracy. You can't have a court of law in a democracy because you don't have any rights in a democracy. You gotta kinda have rights to have a court of law. And you know, there's a maximum of law. He who does not exercise his rights has none. So I guess everybody doesn't have any rights right now, because I don't really see anybody exercising them. I see a bunch of people complaining on the fucking internet. God help us if people don't realize that the creator of this world put law on their hearts. And once they realize that, God help us if they're too fucking scared to go down to a courthouse and stand for that law. Because if that doesn't happen, I guess it's just gonna be the devil's f***ing playtime all the damn time. And it's not gonna be wrong, because people don't know how to f***ing treat each other anymore. Anyways, Luke, Tim, I really hope y'all get at me, or find somebody else who knows this shit and isn't a attorney because their first oath of allegiance is to the goddamn courts. Alright, thank you for joining us throughout this whole presentation. That was about 2 hours long, huh? Yeah. So, what should they do if they're still watching?
If you're still watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell to never miss another video, and share the video because YouTube algorithms won't. You're our only hope. You're our only hope. Also, if you're watching this far, go to timcast.com and his contact page. The link will be in the description below. And please send this to his pitches. He calls them pitches. You know, like if you're going to suggest something for him to do, it's like you're going to pitch me an idea. Send it to his pitches and title it Gold Nugget. And in the description, just tell him, here's the best, easiest way to change the world. And also, if you would go to We Are Change to email Luke Radowski. And same thing, except for him, you would go to info and tips. And of course, you can see all of this going on in the screen behind us. So, what do you know what I do for a living? Well, what do I try and do? Make sure that you have when you grow up. Freedom. Freedom,
that's right. Freedom. So, and how do we know that we don't have freedom? You remember when I got arrested?
No.
What did I get arrested for?
Trying to help Baba stand up in court.
Trying to help Baba stand up in court. So trying to help an 87-year-old man stand up in court and say that woman's not my attorney. And they arrested me, threw me in jail for a couple of days. That's pretty crazy, huh? Do you call that freedom? When a cop can just snatch you up. Nobody's able to do anything.
Yeah, but if they did that to me, I would not be just standing there like this. I would actually just like, except like 10 times harder, and it's not exactly like that.
No, you don't want to fight the cops.
True.
You know, it's all about peaceful non-compliance.
Yeah.
peaceful non-compliance. You just don't help them out. You don't walk into the jail cell for them. You let them drag you. You know? I mean, if they're gonna work, if they say it's their job, let them work at it. Right? So, thank you for watching. Who are we?
We are Just Conspiracy.
And we just wish to conspire
To bring heaven down to earth.
to bring heaven down to earth. Thank you for watching the video, and I truly hope that everybody understands and appreciate that all of the people who were presented in this video today, Valerie Owenby, myself, Philip Kemp, Angela Freiner, and I'm going to mention some other people who weren't presented in this video, like Sierra, who had her kids stolen by the state of Kansas, Mimi Epstein, who, you know, had her daughter taken away for not wearing a mask, and she's actually a medical doctor. Yeah, I know, it's kind of silly, huh?
What?
Yeah, it's silly. Andrew Tickle, and you can see his story on here. The man who got arrested for asking if he was a slave. All of these people have sacrificed their comfort and their lives to stand up for the Creator's law and to do the right thing and to try and make sure that you have freedom when this little man in training grows up. Young man in training. He's graduating to my young man in training, huh? Not so little anymore. He's getting big. He's getting big. Anyways, thank you for joining us. We are Just Conspiracy, and we just wish
To conspire.
to bring heaven down to earth. One world love and peace. Alright.
Obviously, a number of misstatements in the first letter that he wrote back, and there were misstatements in the second letter as well after Ms. Winstead had asked for more information. And we just felt that, you know, we couldn't give a lawyer practicing in North Carolina a pass. We do find then, by clear, cogent, convincing evidence, that the violations set out, or if you would, the issues outlined 1 through 9 have been proven. We are staying the suspension for the entire time. Modification to find a failure to rectify consequences of misconduct. We found subsection P, but would characterize that as an absence of remorse. Under the standard conditions, we typically add in that, of course, the defendant is not to violate any laws of the state of North Carolina. And we would like to modify, if we can, to say including but not limited to the Victims' Rights Act, GS 15A-832, just as an acknowledgement that that's something that we want to make sure that going forward, Mr. Newman is very cognizant of. We would also order that the costs of this action be taxed to the defendant, including the deposition costs associated with the case.
You know what I think is the most disgusting part of this whole thing? Is how cheaply they sell the public out for. $27,000 a month. That's about $325,000 a year. To convince you that the court system actually works. $325,000 a year they sell out all of the people in the state of North Carolina. That's what I think is the most disgusting part.